Please note that in this show you might hear graphic descriptions or language that may not be appropriate for everyone. Listener discretion advised.
What do you remember about that night Dad died?
I called Sherry and she didn't answer, so I left her a voicemail. Well, I was in 7th grade, and apparently these are not things that you leave as voicemails. When was his birthday?
July 3rd, 1948. Happy birthday, Dad. You'd have been 73 today.
Welcome to Parentless Podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Releford. On this show, we're going to be speaking with others who have experienced the loss of one or both of their parents or parental figures. As we heard in episode 12 with Louisa Velarde, being parentless is like an island, and I don't know how to swim. Thank you for being my life jacket. Today you'll hear from my brother Bruce. We met virtually on July 3rd of 2021. I bring this time frame up only because Bruce's Kansas town is also fondly called Boomtown, USA, and you'll hear why they call it that very soon. It might even get kind of crazy at times when it comes to the noise level, and I'm sorry if it's too much, but it adds to the dynamic of the interview. Sometimes the sounds come in at really key points, and it's real life. When Bruce was 50 in April of 2021, he had a heart attack. He had an out-of-body experience, and he believes that he met his guardian angel. Bruce tells about the time that he died in that episode, which is titled, Bruce, We Love You. Be sure to listen to both episodes to capture Bruce's full story. And if you liked that clip at the very beginning, be sure to listen to the end of the interview. When Bruce was given the chance to add anything else to his own interview, he flipped the script and got me to answer a few questions instead. Take it away, big brother.
My name is Bruce Coleman. I am actually Stephanie's older brother. I am 50 years old. I live in Wamego, Kansas. I am in sales for work, and I am here to talk about my parents who have both passed away. In 1978, my mom was diagnosed with lymphoma. Back then, the treatment for cancer was obviously not what it is today, and obviously it's still not what it could and should be. But they were not able to save her. So on April 16th, 1978, she passed away. I was in the first grade, and I remember a few things from that, but not a lot. And I've had people tell me stories that obviously the people who told them I trust, and I believe that it was true, but in my mind, it's been totally like a steel wall put up, blocked out. I don't remember any of it, but I remember, I believe it was a Sunday night that she passed away. My dad and my grandpa, her dad, actually had an appointment in Wichita the following morning, Monday morning, for her to see some specialist that thought he might be able to at least give her some comfort, if not, help her. And Grandma and Grandpa at the time had a big station wagon, and I remember they'd put the back seats down and put a mattress in there, and they'd made it all, as comfortable as you can make it. And the two of them were going to drive her to Wichita Monday morning. Well, part of this lymphoma caused her to retain fluid, and basically she drowned in her own fluid in the middle of the night. I remember waking up, and I don't know what woke me up, but the way my bed laid and the way sat and the way I was laying in bed, I looked into the mirror of my dresser and I saw, looked like lightning, maybe just flashing light in my mirror. So I got up on my knees and looked out the window, and there's an ambulance. And just as I looked out, I saw her head. They were pushing her feet first into the ambulance, and all I could see was her head as she went into the ambulance. I still didn't know anything. And normally my door was wide open, but right now it was only open about 6 inches. So somebody had pulled my door shut trying to keep it quiet so I could sleep. And I don't remember if it was Dad or Grandma or Grandpa who came in the room and told me what happened. And it's like it didn't faze me, but I don't really remember. I mean, I was 7 years old. I'm 50 now. So that's, a week or two ago. I do remember going to the funeral home and helping make arrangements. I actually got to pick out her casket. Why this happened, I don't know, but I remember they took us in a back room where she was at, and we got to see her laying there just on a gurney with a sheet up over her to her chest. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I still have that image burned in my head. And not one that I enjoy remembering. But anyway, so we had the funeral and life went on. I have been told that I bawled like a baby at the funeral and at the graveside service. I honestly do not remember ever shedding a single tear. Not because I wasn't sad. In my mind, thinking about it, I don't think I really understood everything that was going on at 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, nonetheless, we kept a very close and good relationship with her parents, my grandparents. We still went down there and spent the summers, usually 2 weeks at the beginning, right after school got out, and another 2 weeks right before school started in the fall. And they came to visit us all the time. So we never did lose that family connection, that family relationship, which was really nice. And Grandma lived to 94 and Grandpa lived till 96. My mom was 29 when she died.
Mm. And what was your mom's name?
Shirley Raylene. Then, and I don't remember when exactly, but Dad started dating an old family friend who actually had been...
Sorry, do you remember? You remember when he started dating?
No, I don't remember like when. Like, was it 2 weeks after the funeral or 6 months after the funeral? I don't remember.
But you remember the act of him... I mean, did he date anyone else? Was it just her?
If he did, it was all kept behind this. No, we weren't made privy to it.
Okay.
Anyway, the lady that he dated and ended up marrying had actually been my babysitter when we lived in Wichita before we had moved to Garden City, when I was just a baby and a toddler. Been a family friend through church. And they were married then in June of 1979. So 14 months after Mom died. And I don't know. Like I said, I don't know how long they dated. Did they date for a couple of months? Did they date for 6 months, a year? I don't know. He kind of kept that private, which that's fine.
Then my question is, do you remember when, because sometimes, I mean, even if someone's an adult, when, then their one parent dies and then the other parent starts dating, they're really hard. They find a hard time with that. Do you remember, when she first was around, or any thoughts that you might have had?
As a 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid, it didn't bother me. I didn't have any rash or hard feelings or, So then they got married the summer between my second grade and my third grade year. And I remember Well, I remember, but I don't remember. I don't remember what was going on, what I was doing or having issues with. But I was having issues in school in third grade enough that Carla, my stepmom, had weekly meetings with my teacher on Friday afternoon. She would come into school and sit down with my teacher, and I don't remember anything about what it was, whether it was disciplinary, whether it was schoolwork. Knowing me, it was probably disciplinary, but we just kind of transitioned and life went on, and, everything was hunky-dory. And then I graduated high school and left home, and you and Brian were born, or Brian and you, I guess he was born first. That's really all I remember about my mom and her dying and what happened with that situation.
So when your stepmom, Carla, also my mom, when she came into the picture, did you, and just throughout your life, did you ever get the feeling that, she wanted to replace your mom, or you always had a pretty clear understanding of, I had my mom and then here's...
I can't say that I ever thought those thoughts directly, that she wanted to replace her. And if she wanted to replace her, it was in a positive way. She wanted to be that person to comfort and to take care and to nurture and to advise and to help. It was not a, she's gone, I'm here, forget about her, forget about anything that was hers. It's my world now. It was nothing like that at all. So I never got that feeling that that's what she wanted. And if we just for a minute skip way forward, when she was terminally ill and we were home on weekends and she was sorting things in the house and we were cleaning things up. There was so much stuff in the attic above the garage that was my mom's stuff that had been kept for us, for Sherry and I. I didn't even know it existed to begin with, let alone that it had been kept. And so in my heart and mind, I cannot say that she wanted to replace my mom, because if she did, all that stuff would have been gone. It would have been disappeared. It would be, this is my house now. I don't want all those memories in here. Get them out of here. And that did not happen. I am so extremely thankful that stuff got saved. Even like scrapbooks that my mom had made as a teenager in high school, were in there. Her marriage license, her certificate from college where she graduated as a nurse transcriptionist. Silly stuff, but it was all saved in boxes up there in the attic. And in my mind, if somebody wanted to take over and move that person out of your life, all that stuff would have disappeared. Us kids would have never known, at that age, we'd have never had any clue. Now, I don't know if Dad and her had any conversations and Dad recommended it be kept, or if she just did it totally out of the goodness of her heart. I would say probably out of the goodness of her heart she did it. Regardless, it was kept, and it was very special to find all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I asked that question wrong. Like, I don't think that she would have tried to take over, but I guess if you ever felt like in your... And not for real, but like, there's
right.
Probably little times where like, you're not my mom. Da-da-da.
Yes. When she would want to discipline, I remember a couple of times, one in particular that I don't even remember what I did. She was mad at me and trying to discipline me. I said, "You're not my mom. You can't discipline me." And Dad backed me up against the wall, and he had a spatula in his hand. And he was ready just to knock the crud out of me with this spatula. Let me know right quick that whatever she said went, and he backed her 100%. So I better just get off this high horse that she wasn't the boss and couldn't correct me. And I only remember that happening one time.
So do you remember the first time whenever she got a cancer diagnosis?
Yes, actually, I remember she called us on Valentine's night, and we were at the Columbian Theater watching a play, and she called me, and it happened to be at intermission, or I ignored the call, and I called her back at intermission, and she told me that she had, I think I knew she'd been going to the doctor because she had these stomach pains, but she didn't know what it was. And finally, I think it was Dr. Welch there in Garden City, said, you have cancer. You have ovarian cyst. You know, I can see the crystals in the sonogram, whatever. We need to get those out of there like now. And she called Dr. Granger, and, you know, he hooked her up with the best of the best. And I don't remember where she had her surgery that time, the first time in Garden City, or she had it in Wichita. But then I remember her going to Dodge City all the time for her cancer or her chemotherapy treatments. And then she was, 11, 12 years cancer-free before it came back. And they just happened to find it on one of her 6-month or annual blood tests that she took. And at the time, I was her medical power of attorney, so she called me, told me what was up, and said, I need to go see the doctor, and I'd like you to go with me. And I'm like, okay. And so Dr. Granger was able to get her in with an oncologist there in Wichita, and she called the oncologist's office. After she called me, she goes, when you do? I said, you tell me when you get the appointment, I'll make it happen. And she got an appointment like 48 hours. I mean, it was like insane, because that just doesn't happen. You know, those kind of doctors are busy. And I'll never forget this. So I meet her in Wichita, I think. And we go to the doctor's appointment. And so after we're through with the consultation and everything, I asked this doctor, I said, so how did she get an appointment in 48 hours? I said, that's just unheard of. And this lady was like Aussie. And so she had a real brogue accent. And her comment was, when Dr. Granger speaks, we jump. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So they determined that she had, a couple of orange-sized tumors. They're like, I think we can get it, but, you know, we'll just have to go in and see. And so before we left, she's like, no, I just want you to know, she said this to the doctor. She goes, if it's not going to cure me or make my life better, then I don't want to do it. I don't want to have quantity of life without quality of life. She actually said those words. The doctor's like, okay, I can respect that. So I don't know, it was a week, 2 weeks later, we were back down there for surgery, and I'm sitting out in the waiting room. Were you in the waiting room with me too that day? I don't remember. When she had that surgery.
Yeah, I was there when she had the surgery, and I was actually, I think, at that appointment that you were talking about, because I think I drove her there.
Oh, maybe you did.
When you were talking to the doctor. So I remember being in that room with that round white table.
So then the doctor came out, and they're like, it wasn't good. And they're like, what does that mean? It says, well, we opened her up, and her intestines were just full of little cancer nodules. And the only way to get rid of those would have been to take out her entire intestine. And then the doctor looked me or us straight in the eye and says, and remember, she said if she didn't have quality of life, she didn't want quantity of life. And I'm like, yep, that's what she said. She goes, well, she would not have quality of life if we took all of her intestines out. She'd be on a colostomy bag for the rest of her life, and that is not quality. So she goes, we just sewed her back up. Mm-hmm. And that's when it kind of really hit, like, nothing that can be done this time.
Because I know when we were up there, so when you come out of surgery, you're not quite aware of what's happening. So, they were able to tell us. Now, did we tell her right away? What did we have to do?
No, we did not tell her. We didn't want to be the ones to tell her. We wanted the doctor to come in and tell her. So I think we actually lied to her and told her that the doctor just said she was out of surgery, but we hadn't had a chance to talk to the doctor yet, I think is what we told her.
I just know that we knew information that she didn't know, and people
and we had talked about it, and we had said, no, that's not for us to tell her. We need to let the doctor tell her that.
Do you remember any thoughts about that time of knowing of someone's impending death and not being able to say? I mean, I just felt like that was a really weird time. Okay, got to sit here and be like, oh, we don't know anything. I don't know.
Yes, I never really thought about it. No, I guess I really didn't think about it.
Yeah.
From the first time she'd had it, I mean, all they'd ever talked about was ovarian cancer is the worst. You never survive it. You never survive it. And then she survived it for 11 years. And then it's so for me, it was well, it's back. She survived it once. There's a chance she could survive it again for another 10 or 11 years, but there's a chance it'll get her because they say that there is no cure. And if you get it, you will die from it eventually. So I don't remember any specific thoughts or anything. I just know that I didn't want to be the one to tell her. I wanted a doctor to tell her. Mm-hmm. I remember Lauren came up there and we told him out in the hall, but we're not telling her. We want the doctor to come in and tell her. He's like, oh, okay. I can't remember if anybody else came up that afternoon that we told and said, don't tell her. But it wasn't long. It was only an hour or so before the doctor came in and told her. It wasn't too awful long.
So then did she decide to do treatment, or what did she do after that, after she got the news?
Well, she originally was not going to do any treatment because supposedly the only treatment was the one type of chemotherapy that she had taken 11 years earlier. And the last dose of it that she had taken, she'd had a very bad allergic reaction to. And the chemo doctor told her that, you'll never be able to take this again. If you do, it'll probably kill you. And supposedly that was the only chemo that would work on ovarian cancer. So I think initially she was just like, nope, just take me home. I'm not going to do any treatment. But then, I don't know if she ever did. I don't think she ever did do any treatment the second time.
No, she was pretty specific about her choices. She didn't want to. Again, back to the quantity of life over quality of life over quantity.
She changed her diet, how she ate. She cut sugar completely out of her diet. And I honestly, in my heart, believe that's what kept her alive as long as it did, because cancer feeds on sugar. And so when she wasn't giving it any sugar and it had to work for anything it got out of regular food, it basically starved. I think they only gave her 6 months when we were in the hospital.
It was weeks to months. It wasn't very long.
Yeah. And then didn't she live a year and a half or 2 years?
Yeah.
From the time of the surgery till the time she passed away. Well, if they're giving you 6 weeks to 6 months and you make it 2 years, you did something right. But, I can't blame her for not wanting to suffer through that chemo again, especially if it could kill her. Enjoy as much life as she can enjoy with grandkids and, because we had 2 and Brian and Aubrey had 1 and you had 1. Why Why take what she had away from being able to spend time with them and maybe make some memories with them, you know? I don't know if that's being selfish or if it'd been more selfish to demand that she take treatments. But my thought was it's her life, it's her choice. My job is to support her. And my job is to do whatever I can to help her, keep her comfortable. And unfortunately, not living there, I couldn't do a lot of that. You got stuck with most of that since you lived just a few blocks away, and the rest of us were all over the country. I know I made more trips home in that year and a half than I'd made in a long time.
Yeah.
We were out there like every other weekend. So,
do you remember her dates?
What dates?
Do you know like her birthday and when she died?
Birthday was September 29th, 1954. And her death date was August, I want to say 15th, but it was August of 2015.
And what was stepmom's name?
Carla May McKnight Coleman.
Okay. I'm writing it down like I don't know it, but, you know, just so I can stay
I was thinking maybe you didn't remember.
No, I do. I'm just trying to stay in my I don't know things a little bit. So, all right. So with her, she was your predominant like mother figure that you were able to remember. Do you remember any sayings or anything that she ever said?
Oh my.
Do I remind you of her?
Yes.
How so?
Your compassion, definitely. She was very compassionate and cared about everybody. You're obviously compassionate to do a show like this and try to help other people.
But you were also surprised that I was so compassionate while you listened to this show. So is this something that you learned, I guess, by listening to my show?
Okay, so that everybody listening to this knows we're 13 years apart. So when you were old enough to start having, attitude is not the right word, but where you're starting to develop as a person and a personality and those kind of things, I was already out of high school and gone. So I didn't see you much out of grade school. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't see and realize and understand those things until, something like listening to your show. It's like, wow, yeah, I hear that. I hear that coming through. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is very admirable quality. But I think you got more of the Coleman look, Coleman blood that way versus the McKnight blood. But you definitely have her personality and her compassionate qualities, that you care about people and you want to help people. And
I will give you that with the compassionate, because I don't find myself to be such a compassionate person. Now, at times, probably yes, but sometimes I think I could probably be more. But that's besides the point.
Well, we all have that. Overall, to do a show like this, compassion is what drives you to do this. Because you have compassion for other people who went through a loss like we've went through, and you want to give them a place to tell their story. Because honestly, talking about it out loud actually helps heal. And you realize that. And that's the compassion that I'm talking about that you have. And you've taken and created this podcast that's what it does. So kudos to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to ask you if I reminded you of her, because people always used to tell me how much I looked like her. And I did not like to hear that. I don't know why. And I was probably a really brat about people saying that. So now I wondered, if if I look like her or if anything like that. So a little bit, not really.
Yeah.
I don't really.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one for me to say, because I have people tell me that I look like my great grandpa, Tom Brown. And well, I was like 2 years old when he died. I never knew him, but I've had people walk up to me that I have no clue who they are. And they say, "You're related to Tom Brown, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's my great granddad." "Oh, I knew you had to be. You look just like him." And so, I don't think we see ourselves obviously like other people see us. And it's very hard to see ourselves look like somebody else. I don't think I look like Dad, but I have one trait that was his. This bottom tooth, he had the exact same tooth that was pushed back in the center bottom of his teeth. I don't know if that makes it hereditary or if it's just coincidence, but it's something that we shared.
Parentless Podcast is available on many podcast platforms, including Spotify, Spreaker, Apple, Google Play, and Amazon, just to name a few. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please consider sharing the show with a friend or rating and reviewing wherever you're listening right now. This will help get the word out about the show, and if one person can be helped by listening to someone's story found here, that is amazing. If you would like to help support the show, view extra content, and hear about special projects happening with Parentless Podcast, please visit www.patreon.com/parentlesspodcast.
What was your dad's name?
John Steve Coleman. He went by Steve. Why he went by Steve versus John, I do not know. It's just what he always went by.
When was his birthday?
July 3rd, 1948. Happy birthday, Dad. You'd have been 73 today.
And when did he pass away?
July 2nd, 1998. One day before he turned 50.
Yeah. If I was an outsider, I would make a pretty big deal about the fact that he passed away right before his 50th birthday. Awesome. We got the fireworks going now. They're full bang there.
Can you hear him still?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Not as much, but I can hear him. Tell me about your dad and wherever you want to start with him, and once you notice, if you noticed him being sick or when health problems started, or wherever you want to start is fine.
Oh, my. Well, his health problems started when he got diabetes. And I can't remember when it had to have been maybe when I was in high school, 86, 87. But he refused, for whatever reason, to follow doctor's orders and take care of himself like they said he should. For the longest time, he didn't take any medicine for his diabetes. And finally, well, in fact, I don't think he ever went and got tested. We knew something was wrong because he started dropping weight, and he lost a ton of weight. And he was never a big guy. He was like 250, and he lost down to like 215, 220. But he was 5'11". He wasn't a very big framed guy. So he'd had a big belly on him. Well, when he lost 30 pounds, the belly was gone. And so you knew something, and his face was kind of drawn, and you could just tell he didn't feel good. Finally, he went to the doctor, found out he had diabetes. By that time, it was so bad he was insulin dependent. He would take his insulin like he was supposed to, but then he'd go out and eat like he always did. Breakfast, he would either go to Coffee Ann restaurant downtown, or he'd go out to the 83 restaurant. And he always had fried eggs, sausage or bacon, hash browns, and toast. Now, what part of that is a good diabetic breakfast?
And all the nasty runny yolk.
Yes, and he did eat his yolks runny, the only way to eat it. And then he always carried either a can of Pringles or a bag of potato chips in his truck. That was his nutrition. That's what he called it. It wasn't snacks. It wasn't chips. It was my nutrition. And he had one of those big, like 44-ounce Love plastic mugs from Love Country Store that he filled with water. And I don't know how many of those a day he drank. But he drank those and ate potato chips after he had a big breakfast at the restaurant. And then he'd work from 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning until midnight. We had 2 businesses. We had a lawn care business and a janitorial business. So he'd be out with the mowing crews during the day or running errands for the cleaning crews. And then he'd be out checking on cleaning crews or stripping and waxing floors or shampooing carpets at night. And so really he was burning the candle at both ends. And that obviously didn't help anything either. So I don't remember when he went to the doctor and found out he had something wrong with his heart. But he went to Wichita for whatever reason, had this appointment. And he had I think it was 8 blockages or almost blockages. And it was so bad that they wanted to do surgery right then and there. I guess they had a trauma surgery team standing outside his room door ready to take him to surgery. He says, "You're not touching me. Send me home." And why is this? If you do surgery, is it going to make my life better? They're like, "Well, we can't guarantee that." He goes, "If you can't guarantee it, then I'm not doing it. Send me home." So he was very big into naturopathic stuff, which I have absolutely no problem with. I think there is a place for that in medical care. And his doctor there in Garden City gave these treatments. They were called chelation treatments. Do you remember him taking those?
I do.
I don't remember how often he took them, if it was weekly or every other week or twice. I don't remember. All I remember is that they were very, very expensive and we couldn't afford them. So his aunt, who lived in Topeka, who had plenty of money, paid for him to have these treatments.
Oh, wow.
And he just knew they were helping. He was going to get better. And so I think it was 2 weeks before he died, he went back to his cardiologist in Wichita for them to do another scan to see if this chelation treatment had helped. Dad's like, "Oh, yeah, everything's better." It's, The doctor's like, "All right, here's what I'll do. I'm not saying you have to have it totally cured and all of them be cleaned out. But if there is less blockage today than there was when you were in here however many months ago, I won't bill you for the visit today." And up until the day Carla died, she never received a bill for that appointment. Never got the results either to tell whether it was better or worse, but didn't get a bill, which tells you that it must have been somewhat better. Or he just felt bad because Dad died, so he did. Yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened a couple of weeks before he died. And then the week before he died, we were all in Colorado together. And Grandma and Grandpa Brown were up there with us. And we had a family picture taken under one of the big pine trees, all of us. And that was taken on Sunday afternoon before we all left to go home. And then whatever the second was that week, Thursday night, he died. So from Sunday to Thursday was the last picture he had taken, and we were all in a big family picture. Back up a little bit. before all of this happened, I say all of this, the Colorado, the doctor's appointment, Dad had asked me if I would come out and work for him for a week while his foreman for the mowing business took vacation. Well, at the time he asked me, I was unemployed. I was looking for a job. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Absolutely. Because I knew he'd pay me well. I knew the work. I'd done it for years. So I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll come out and do that. Well, then I got a job. I got a call, got an interview, got hired to be the assistant manager of Trade Home Shoes in the mall here in Manhattan. And I called Dad and I said, Dad, I am so sorry, but I just got a new job and I'm not going to be able to come home and work for you for that week that Jerry is gone. This is the last conversation Dad and I had over the phone. And his response to me, the last words he ever said to me is, well, son, you have to do what you have to do. You have to look out for yourself first. That was our last conversation. And since I know stress piles on and helps cause heart attacks and all of this, for years after he died, I beat myself up. What if I'd have been able to go out and work for him? If I had been out and worked for him, would I have just been there when he died? Would he have not died because he didn't have the stress, because I was there to take his full-time person's place that now he's having to fill in because I didn't go? And so I went back and forth for years, beating myself up that it was my fault that he died. I finally have been able to resolve that and know that it was his time anyway, and he was going to go whether we'd have been there or not. And I don't say that to wanting it to sound harsh or uncaring or callous. But what I'm trying to say is I don't think me having been out there would have saved him. When we were in Colorado, he and I had a conversation. I saw him walking across the grass one day, and he was just holding his chest like this. I could tell his face, he was in pain. And I stopped him and I said, Dad, why won't you go let somebody take a look and see if you can get help? Oh, I'm too busy right now. Summer is so busy. He goes, I found a doctor in Arizona, and if I make it till fall, then we're planning to go to Arizona this fall, and I'm going to get it looked at. I says, Dad, why wait? Why be miserable till fall? Leave now. Go get it looked at. Go see if they can help you. Oh, no, can't do that. I have his death certificate, and it says that he died of pulmonary, blah, 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 blah. And I tell everybody, I said, that's actually a misdiagnosis. He died of hard-headedness. That if he hadn't been so hard-headed and would go to the doctor, they probably could have actually given him some quality of life, and he might even still be here today. But he might not. But he didn't give anybody the chance to help him. And that's what, for me, is frustrating, is knowing the technology that's out there. Granted, there's more today than there was in 1998, but still, in 1998, hearts were a thing that they could do a lot with. So that Thursday night, July 2nd, 1998, Shelley is at a financial services seminar. She's teaching a class on investments. I am sitting at home with my cousin, playing on the computer, and the phone rings. And that phone call happens to be from yours truly, my little sister, Stephanie. And I said hello, and I don't remember you saying hello or hi. I saw it was the home phone number on caller ID. All I remember you saying is, I think Dad's dead. I don't think he's going to live. And I'm like, what? And then I hear Carla, my stepmom, your mom, in the background saying, they're working on him now. They're doing CPR. They're trying to revive him because I can't find his DNR paper. But I don't think he's going to make it. I think this is it. And I'm like, oh my. So Troy is there with me. We fly across town. I pull Shelly out of her meeting. We come home. We pack. And in the meantime, while we're making that trip across town, I call Shelly's mom and dad, who just happened to be, oh, by the way, for the show, Shelly is my wife. We've been happily married now for 25 years. Her mom and dad had left that morning to go to Dodge City and pick up her grandparents and go to Colorado for vacation. Her dad worked for the Highway Patrol. He used to work in Garden City, so he knew all the troopers, everything. I called him, and he was filling their car up with gas. They had just gotten to Dodge City. They hadn't even been to their hotel, hadn't been to Shelly's grandparents' house. He goes, all right, let me finish filling the car up, and we'll head to Garden City. I'll call you when I know what's going on. So he takes off to Garden City. He calls Highway Patrol dispatch and says, hey, my son-in-law's dad, they think, has died. This is their address. Can you listen to the police scanner and let me know anything that you hear on the scanner about the situation? And, oh, by the way, I'm coming through from Dodge City. So, just so you know, I'll be coming through. So let's just say, I don't know how fast he drove, but Shelly and I got home, threw a bag of clothes together, and we were about 6 or 7 miles out of town when her dad called me. And that conversation went, Bruce, where you at? We're driving. We're on K-18. I need you to pull over. Why? I'm driving. He goes, Bruce, I need you to pull over. Just pull over to the side of the road and put it in park. Okay. You obey your father-in-law. So I pull over. I put it in park. I can't remember if I put it on speaker so Shelly could hear it, or if I just turned up the volume. And he said, "Are you parked?" Like, yes, I'm parked. The car's in park. We're not moving. He goes, "Bruce, your father has passed away. He didn't make it." I said, "Yeah, I already knew that." He goes, "We're here with your mom. We will stay here until you get here tonight. Don't rush. There's nothing you can do tonight. Just drive safe so you get here in one piece." Okay. So back to how fast he drove. So when I called him shortly after I'd talked to you, so EMS was there, and I don't know if they had called the funeral home yet or not, but they got there before the funeral home took Dad out of the house. I don't know if you remember that. So they were flying because it's 50 miles from Dodge to Garden. You hear that? This is the poor folks shooting their fireworks.
I totally hear it. I'm kind of hoping that it comes through. Your talking comes through okay.
Well, I guess I could put a blanket over my head to deafen it some. Wow. They shot a whole semi-trailer full of fireworks off last night over on that street. We sat out front and watched them.
Wow.
Sounds like... Is that quieter now?
Probably not.
Is that any quieter?
Maybe. I mean, that doesn't look too comfortable for you, but maybe we can try it.
Well, it's not about comfort.
But yeah, back to them coming to the house. After you told me that story, I kind of had like a vision maybe of her mom, Shelly's mom, sitting on the couch, maybe. But
I don't think she sat. Because by the time we got there, she'd cleaned out the fridge. She'd changed every bed in the house. She had laundry going from changing all the beds in the house. They had went over to the Super 8 and booked us a hotel room for an entire week so that we'd have a place to stay so that other people could stay at the house. And then they're like, we're going to cancel our vacation and we're going to stay here. And I said, no, absolutely not. Dad would not want that. I don't want that. I want you to still take your vacation. I said, now I'll compromise with you. If you want to come back early from your vacation to be here for the funeral, I would be honored to have you here for support for the funeral. But please don't totally cancel your vacation. So that's what they did. They went ahead and went to Colorado, but they came back in time for the funeral. So
I want to stop for a second because I know that some people are kind of like, well, what should I do when someone passes away? What should I do? And I don't remember. I don't remember that happening, but I can imagine how helpful that would have been just to have things, something that mom wouldn't have had to worry about, and maybe even just having somebody there. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should just go into somebody's house and start doing things. That's right. That's one way to show up. It's kind of how we say. So,
yeah. So then, it really, for me personally, I can't speak for Shelley or you or Brian or Sherry or anybody else, but for me, it really didn't soak in that he was dead until we saw him at the funeral home. Even when we were making arrangements at the funeral home, because he was working, from 5 a.m. to midnight, you never saw him anyway. He was never at home. So for him to not be at home, it was no big deal, And so we went down to the funeral home on Monday morning and made arrangements. And they changed things since mom had died. You just looked in the book to pick out the casket. You didn't actually go in a room full of boxes and pick one out. So we did very conservative. Anyway, got it all planned. But then my concern was, could we get enough people in that chapel there at Price and Son Funeral Home? Breathe. Sorry, those fireworks.
If you want to wait for a minute, then you're okay. Yeah, they're
I don't think a minute's going to stop that. That street behind us, they spend $10,000 to $15,000 a year on fireworks as a neighborhood. Wow. And shoot them all off together. So anyway, because he had his saw sharpening business, his lawn care business, his cleaning business, he'd been a bus driver for the school district, all the things that he was involved in. I'm like, how many people does this chapel hold? It was like 220 is what it held. Give or take a dozen. Anyway, I'm like, man, I don't know if that's enough seats. I mean, with all the people that he knew and was connected to, his funeral could be huge. And in July, you don't want people having to stand outside. You don't want it to be so crammed that the air conditioner can't keep people cool. You're already miserable because it's a funeral. You don't need it to be miserable because it's hot too. And so I'm like, let's use Clifford Hope Auditorium at the high school. And so the funeral home's like, okay, we can talk to the school district and see if we can get that. And so they did, and they got it. So we had his funeral there. The number of people that showed up to his funeral would have fit in the chapel at the funeral home and had about 10 seats left open. It was that close. Now, just from that one topic, jump forward to when Carla's stepmom passed away. She told, I don't know if she told all of us or she just told me, whatever you do, you have my service at the funeral home. You don't go have at some other place. You can get everybody in the funeral home and have it there. And she was very adamant about that. And I think she pretty well filled that funeral home up herself. But that was her wish, was to have it there. So we had it there. We had the funeral. We'd go up to the cemetery. And Shelley's dad is just amazing. He left the funeral and he went to some quick shop or 7-Eleven or Coastal Mart and got a couple of styrofoam coolers, a couple bags of ice, and a couple cases of water. So he went and did that on his way to the cemetery. I don't know if you remember, but it was one hot, miserable day, that July 6th or 7th, whenever the funeral was. So after the graveside service, he brought bottles of water to all the family, and then he had it sitting out a little ways so that other people, if they wanted or needed some, could come by and get it. And then after everybody had gotten through, coming through the, I guess I'll call it a receiving line, where they all come by and shake your hands and tell you how sorry they are and everything at the graveside, he comes along and he's going through. And when he gets to me, I will never, ever forget this. He squats down in front of me so that he can look up into my eyes. He takes both of my hands in his hands. He's like, "Son, I know I will never, ever be able to replace your dad, but I want you to know that if you ever need anything, I will do my best to fill that spot as dad for you. Please don't hesitate to come to me if you need something." And then gave me a big hug and went on down the line. And our relationship has been that way all these years since then. So I had been married 2 years at the time that happened. And this year was my 25th anniversary. So
Yeah.
It was definitely something that meant a lot to me. And I have definitely taken advantage, and not in a negative way when I say taken advantage, but I mean, I've taken him up on his offer to, "Hey, can I talk to you about this? Hey, what would you do? Hey, is this a good deal? Is this a good idea?" I've been very grateful for that open communication that I've had there since then.
Was there anything with Dad that any saying that you remember him saying, any phrase, any joke, anything like that?
Well, all of my friends remind me that their favorite saying of Dad's was, "Now, Bruce." Anytime he'd get upset at me or I do something wrong, supposedly, it was, "Now, Bruce." And it was something like that. It was how he actually said it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have two friends in particular that still to this day will bring that up from time to time. "You remember when you do something wrong, your dad would always go, 'Now, Bruce.'" Yes, I remember that. He would ask questions. Here's a perfect example. When I came to college at K-State, I would come home on weekends. I got out of class at 11 o'clock on Friday morning, and I'd drive home Friday afternoon, and he would save up like carpet cleaning jobs or tile and wax jobs or tree trimming jobs, things that I knew how to do that took sometimes special talent or extra time that his regular crew didn't have time to do. And so he'd save those, and I'd come home on weekends and do them. Well, so this one, Dad did not like technology. He hated technology. And I finally went out and bought him a pager. Once he got it, he started paying the monthly bill because he found out how helpful it was. But when I'd come home on weekends, he would give me the pager so that he could call me and get a hold of me if he needed me to go do something else or meet him somewhere or whatever. So this one particular weekend, he wanted me to shampoo the carpets at Fidelity State Bank down on Main Street. Okay, I shampooed those carpets all the time, not a big deal. I don't remember what time I went down there, 7, 8, 9, whatever time I got into town. Went in, started cleaning. And when I'd come home and work like that Friday night, I'd work till, 2 o'clock in the morning, and then go home and then come back at 8 o'clock Saturday morning and, finish or whatever. So obviously my truck's parked on Main Street because I'm on Main Street at the bank cleaning. The next morning, Dad's like, "So, what were you doing last night?" Shampooing carpets at the bank. "Really? Is that all you were doing?" "Yes, Dad, that's what you asked me to do. And I was down at the bank cleaning carpets." "Oh, okay. Just want to make sure. Are you sure that's all you were doing?" "Yes, Dad, that's all I was doing." "What are you talking about?" "Well, somebody called and told me that they saw you dragging Main Street." "Well, my truck was parked on Main Street because that's where the door is to get into the bank, but I wasn't driving it anywhere." "Okay, I just wanted to make sure." But he'd always say it with that little edge of doubt, or that edge of, "I got something on you and you don't know what it is, but I'm gonna get you to admit to it before I tell you what it is." It didn't bother me because I just knew that's the way he was. And I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong. I did exactly what he told me to do. So it didn't matter what he thought. I knew that I had obeyed him and I was good. So, but yeah, he wouldn't just ever come out and say, somebody called me and said, "You were dragging Maine. Were you dragging Maine?" It has to be this long, drawn out interrogation.
Right.
An insinuation that I was doing something I shouldn't do.
You've lost 3 parental figures.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that their losses have changed your life?
Man, that's a tough question. I guess the one thing I wonder is the life that I'm living, the way that I'm raising my kids, providing for my family, would my parents be proud of me if they were alive today and seen what I've been able to do? Or would they say that I've failed and that I should have done something different? I mean, there's times where I think, wow, if I could talk to Dad, what would he say about this? What piece of advice would he have for whatever? And well, I just have to go on and hope that what I do is right because I can't ask him. Mm-hmm. I guess that's really all. Is have I grown into the person that they hoped that I would grow into when they were correcting me, guiding me, pushing me, leading me, whatever, as a kid? Have I grown into that person, or have I failed them?
I got to spend some time with you recently, and you also had a big event that we can talk about here in a minute. But I think that over time, I believe that you've kind of mellowed out, as we all do probably. And I think I feel very comfortable in saying, of course, they'd be proud of you in all that you've done and how you've raised your family.
Age will mellow you. I will tell you, as a kid, we always think our parents are wrong. We always think our parents are too hard on us. Why do they make us do this or do that? I am so very thankful that I figured it out before Dad died. That what he'd been trying to tell me, teach me, guide me, really wasn't because he didn't like me and was wanting to be a jerk, but it was because he really cared and loved me and wanted me to do better. And I actually had that conversation with him one day that, Dad, I understand now what you've been saying all these years. And I want to thank you for being hard on me, even when I thought you were a jerk, even when I didn't like it, because I'm old enough now, I've matured enough, I can see that you were really doing it for my best interest. So many people don't know if don't get to is the right phrase, because maybe they had an opportunity, but they weren't willing to admit it and say that to their parents. But I saw it, I understood it, and I was willing to admit it. And I'm so glad that I got to say that to Dad. Thank you for the way you raised me. It really was in my best interest, even though there were days I'd have just soon punched you as listened to you. Looking back now, I know that you were right. And I'm so glad that I realized that while he was still alive and was able to tell him thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Let's see. Normally I ask people, and you kind of alluded to it previously.
Yeah.
And it's, if you were able to say anything to him, if you could talk to him now, what would you tell him?
Man, I don't know what I'd say to him today. If I could say something to him today. I guess the one thing he told me that I didn't listen to back then was you need to lose the weight and keep your health good. Well, it's easier while you're young than when you get old. And
all right. Well,
obviously I didn't do that.
All right. I want to talk about that, but hold on. Is there anything that you would want to say to your stepmom or to your mom if you could?
I love you. You've heard my story about my incident. And after it was mentioned to me, I truly believe that my mom was there with me that night and told me that she loved me, and I told her that I loved her. Whether that's really true, I don't know, but I feel like it was.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please consider sharing the show with a friend or rating and reviewing wherever you're listening right now. This will help get the word out about the show, and if one person can be helped by listening to someone's story here, that is amazing. If you would like to share your story with me, you can visit the website at www.backhomemedia.com/parentlesspodcast. You can also email me at parentlesspodcast@gmail.com. Another way to get a hold of me is to find me on Instagram or Facebook, also at Parentless Podcast. And lastly, if you're a phone person, please leave me a voicemail at 623-396-6069. If you love the show and you'd like to help with any special projects that might go on at Parentless Podcast or just be privy to some special extras, go ahead and visit patreon.com/parentlesspodcast.
So we knew she was dying. Time was getting near. I don't know how often you went over in those last few months until you started living there the last few weeks. But I think we came out like every other weekend. And Brian's came out every other weekend on the weekends that we didn't come out. And I didn't know she was doing this at the time, but we'd be talking or we'd be going through the house and you just make a comment about an item. One that comes to mind was her tower oscillating fan. I made the comment. I said, "So how do you like that fan?" I said, "We've been contemplating buying one of those, but I just didn't. As small as it is, doesn't put out much air." Asking questions, Well, when she passed away, we found a document on her computer that had a list of all the things that I was supposed to get, that Sherry was supposed to get, that was Brian was supposed to get, that you were supposed to get, that had been things that we had mentioned or maybe asked for, but none of us knew she was keeping a list. Now I'm going to ask you, do you remember what else was on that list? It didn't have to do with any particular item, the thing that stood out to me on that list that we printed off the computer. At the bottom of that, after it had the list of all the things that each of us were supposed to get, it said, "Now, as you go through the rest of the house, please don't fight over anything. If there's one item and two of you want it, one of you take the item and one of you take some of the money I left you and go buy another one. It's still from me because it's my money. Do you not remember that? I laughed and laughed because it was like, the whole thing was don't fight, just get along. I'd never seen something like that written out before. And it caused a chuckle, which kind of broke the melancholy mood just a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
Don't fight. Just take some of the money I'm leaving you and go buy another one. It's still for me because it's my money.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay.
And
I can speak for myself. There was nothing that somebody else wanted that I wanted that I had to go buy myself because I let them have it. And there was things I let go. Like I think we left Derek the air compressor. That was on my list. I was supposed to get that. And then I decided, no, that's too big. I don't want to take that big, huge thing home. And the toolbox was on my list. Dad's toolbox out in the garage, the big red one on wheels. And Brian said he wanted it. So I'm like, yeah, take it. I don't really have a place for it. I just didn't want it to, go to a garage sale or an auction. So, there was a couple things like that I wanted that I let go, but it wasn't something that I really had a use for or needed. I just didn't want it to get sold. Mm-hmm. I did get some stuff of Dad's. It's cool. I got his military locker, his metal trunk.
Oh yeah.
His army uniform, his dress greens and his dress khakis. I have his casket flag. Somewhere I have his dog tags and his, DD-214, his paperwork that gave him honorable discharge from the military. I have all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just in a box, most of it, but stuff that I just didn't want to throw away.
Do you believe in signs, or do you ever think that you see signs from them?
Well, other than that experience in the hospital, I'd have to say no. Probably because I don't think about it. Mm-hmm. Life is going so fast and you're just moving to keep up. I guess I just don't think about stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So no, I really don't. Do you?
I do like numbers. But I still don't necessarily say a number is a sign. I think it's more like the coincidentalness of numbers, I guess.
People say a cardinal is a sign of a loved one, there to take care of you, watch over you, whatever. And we have a couple of cardinals that live in the trees here behind our house, and they'll come up on the deck sometimes. I guess I've never really thought about it. Is it my parents there watching me? I don't know. I'm not going to say it's not, but I never really think about it that way. It's just like, oh, there's some pretty birds.
Yeah, everybody has different experiences, and we just never know. I definitely wanted to hear about that, your experience there in the hospital, because that's something that I think everybody wonders if there's something after death.
I will tell you, I have a friend in Kansas City who had a heart attack and died at home in bed. And there's a picture taken of his family around his bed. And I don't remember, EMTs or whatever there as well. But he tells the story how he was up above watching down on them working on him and seeing his family cry and all the pain they were going through. It was like I couldn't do anything from there. But then when they brought him back, revived him, and he's recovered, he's like, I'm here for a much bigger mission. I don't know what the Lord has for me, but I've got to do it. And I'm going to go, full gusto and give him everything I've got. And I feel the same way. It's like, what does he have for me to do? Because I'm not that special of a person. he didn't bring me back for me. He didn't bring me back for my wife and kids. He brought me back for him. What does he want from me? I just need to be willing to see, hear, understand whatever that mission is that he has for me, and then do it. And that's a whole lot easier said than done, probably sometimes too.
What's it like being a parentless parent? And now your kids, if you want to tell, well, you just talked about, graduating high school and then the 8th grade promotion. So they are older. So you have some experience. So tell us.
It was pretty easy to talk to them about Dad because they never saw a grandpa. And so when we were in Garden City one time, we went up to the cemetery and showed them where he was buried and explained to them the whole story. This is Grandpa. He had a heart attack and died, before you were born, blah, blah, blah. And so they just kind of went with the flow. It was much more difficult to tell them about my mom because I was torn whether to even tell them about it or not, because they have a grandma. And I didn't want to take any grandma responsibility or grandma feelings or grandma love from them away by telling my kids that this is my stepmom, my mom died. I didn't know how the kids would take that. And finally, Shelley and I talked about it several times when we'd been to New Mexico. We drive right by the cemetery. And finally, one trip, we just stop and go in and drive up to the grave. And I explained to him, this is my mom. Grandma Carla is my stepmom. My mom died when I was in 1st grade and my dad remarried. So that doesn't make her any less of a grandma to you. But we just wanted you to know. And I think we did it after Shelby was a little bit older because Shelby's middle name is Raylene after my mom. I don't know, she was probably 5 or 6 maybe one time we finally did it. So Blake had been 8 or 9. They'd never ask any questions. So it's like, why bring up a topic if they're not asking about it? Just let it go. And then finally it's like, no, we need to tell them. They need to know the truth. I think I even talked with Carla about it and what her thoughts and feelings were. And she agreed that it was a okay and good thing to do. So we did it.
Smell, sight, taste, sound and you don't have to name all of them, but if there's just anything within that group of things that reminds you of your mom or your stepmom.
Mom, no. I was too young. Stepmom, man, I don't. Smells, I really can't think of any. Dad, he made this homemade steak sauce that was just awesome. I used to make it all the time. I haven't made it in years. He used to make fried potatoes with onions and hot dogs in it for a meal. That was like one of his go-to when he was single and just had us kids to take care of. We ate lots of fried potatoes and hot dogs. And now the smell of that just turns my stomach. I cannot put a bite of that in my mouth at all. It's the fried potatoes. I cannot stand. I don't even like hash browns. But he used to slice the potatoes, and he'd slice them with a knife so they were thick slices, so sometimes they were still half crunchy. And, man, we wolfed those down as a kid. It's like, oh, this is the best thing. But now the smell of it just turns my stomach.
Well, is there anything that we haven't said here that we didn't talk about that you wanted to bring up? I know we're kind of all over the place.
What do you remember about that night Dad died?
So like we said, the next day was his 50th birthday. So I was in the car. Now, okay, let me say that I played the piano all the time, and he had an office downstairs. His computer was downstairs. My piano was downstairs. So I think I had finished practicing, and I had come up, and I was waiting in the car to go get decorations for his 50th birthday party the next day. So then Mom came out and she got me, and I don't know if she said, what exactly she said, but basically it was like, I think that dad is dead. So I went in the house and I went down the stairs and then I saw him. He was sitting in his office chair and I think he was just kind of back. And so I touched his arm or so I touched his skin and it was cold. And so I would just remember screaming. And then she sent me upstairs to go wait for the ambulance, whoever was to come, to let him know to come into the house. I was outside and that was my job, is just kind of directing people in. And at some point I made phone calls because that was also my job. I don't remember, like I would have been, I guess, after, because she told you that they were working on him. So I would have been out in the front and then come back in to make phone calls. I don't remember whatever I said to you guys. And then I also know I called Sherry and she didn't answer. So I left her a voicemail. Well, I was in 7th grade and apparently these are not things that you leave as voicemails. Right. So I always felt, pretty bad about, that was how I left a voicemail about this. Now she'll tell me that, it's not a problem. So made those calls. And after that, I really don't know. I do have a memory of Grandma Brown had shown up and they were sitting on the couch. This would have been in the evening because I was in bed. But then that was pretty much not the only time.
They didn't show up till like 11 o'clock that night because I had called them when I was on the road to Garden City from up here. And I'd called them and they like hopped in. And I said, don't worry, nothing you can do tonight. Just come tomorrow. And Grandpa's like, nope, we're not going to be able to sleep anyway. So we just will get on the road and get there. So they showed up at like 11 o'clock that night at the house.
So I don't know if it was that night or another night, but they were on in the living room, and then Mom was just wailing. And I was just like, oh, well, Grandma Brown made her cry. Well, no, she didn't. So those are the main things. I remember one of the old employees brought a specific like cracker over in the days following. And I really love that, actually. I don't remember when you guys got there. I really don't remember your in-laws coming. I do know we went for a drive, me, you, and Shelly. You guys took me out, I guess. And then I remember you're like, is there anybody that you want to talk to? And I was like, no, I don't think so. That's pretty much my memories.
I don't remember that.
And then just in general, I mean, I used to sleep with my door open before that, and then Dad was snoring and stuff. And so, but that first night, it was just quiet. And so then after that, I shut my door to sleep. And even now, I prefer to have my door shut, but I gotta have it open so my kids can like come over and stuff. But I prefer to sleep with a shut door. And I always thought it was probably because of that. I don't know. But
wow.
Yeah, that's what I remember in a nutshell. So
what about when your mom died? What do you remember? I mean, we talked a little bit about early on the surgery and stuff where we were together with her, but I wasn't there when she died. I didn't get there till that afternoon or that evening because I had just got elected to the school board and we were having school board member training till noon that day. And we were planning on coming out that day when we got, and so we did. But I remember Brian texting me and I'm in training that she'd passed away or that she wasn't good, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I told him I was in this training. And so he texted me when she passed away. And, immediately when training was over, we left and headed that way. But you were there. How was it for you? What do you remember?
You mentioned previously about us moving in, kind of, and so we had been there. I would still go to work, and then Derek would stay with her during the day. But that weekend, Ryan and Aubrey were there, and it was just we had his brother staying at our house, and it was just kind of a full. So we were going to take like a little break before we really got into because she really didn't need us. She just, Derek was just there talking to her, or whatever. But she needed a little bit, but she didn't need. We were going to take a break, so we stayed the night in a hotel. And I had a spider bite that day. So we were going to go to urgent care and then come to the house. So we did that. And then when we showed up at the house, it had not even been 24 hours. I mean, we saw her the evening before, but she just, she was talking to us previously. But when we walked into the house, she just looked completely different. She was just in her chair, didn't really have her eyes open, didn't, yeah. And that was the first night that we hadn't really been there with her at night. We didn't expect to come in to see her that much different. I think when I saw her, I probably just started crying because she was different. So then went out into the garage for a little bit and then came back in. But anyway, I would put lotion on her for whatever symptom or ailment she had. And so I was going to put her lotion on her. I think I did or something. But when I went to touch her, she was cooler than before. We had actually found out that we were going to have Doc earlier that day. So Derek was able to sit down and tell her, hey, Carla, we're going to have another baby. And up until that point, she hadn't really responded very much. But when he told her that, she was able to nod. And so then about 30 minutes after that, I was kind of putting on her lotion and I felt that she was a little cooler than normally she would have been. And then that's when we kind of found out she had passed away. So I was sitting there next to her. Derek says he heard or he recognized the breath, the rattle breath. And then we had to, call hospice, and the hospice lady came over and gave us a big cross on a necklace.
Mm-hmm.
That was that.
I just remember she had written in her notes, whatever you do when I die, don't call the funeral home. Don't call 911. Call the hospice nurse. And don't call anybody else until she gets to the house.
Let me give you a proper send-off. Big brother, thank you for being here on Parentless Podcast. And thank you for your time. And I'm glad that we got to have this discussion.
I'm glad we got to have this discussion too. I was extremely nervous coming on, but you made it very comfortable and easy to talk. And I'm glad I got you to put some of your thoughts into this as well, since it wasn't a situation that affected just me, but it affected all of us kids.
Take care. You have a great night. And
you too.
Happy birthday to Dad, like you said, and happy 4th of July.
Bye-bye.
Parentless Podcast is recorded in Phoenix, Arizona. Find us on social media and most major podcast platforms. Music provided by Coleman and the Revolving Birds. Studio and editing provided by Back Home Media and Ian Releford. Check out one of the many shows on our network. I am your host, Stephanie Releford.